some of my personal favorite indie games of all time, but the genre has grown so much such that subgenres are needed now, so here are my picks of the best top-down titles that you can play right now. However, if you're looking for roguelite platformers, do watch my video linked above, but if this was exactly what you were looking for, do stick around. Let's begin with Patch Quest, one that, despite the cutesy exterior, is one of the more challenging entries on the list.
Wow!
This of course adds monster taming elements into the action roguelite, where you have to wrangle and tame these creatures that then allow you to ride on them and to use their abilities. The abilities are then used Metroidvania style to access new areas and add to that a home base that you can upgrade, and you can see why I love this game since there are plenty of progression systems that always allow you to make some progress in each run. I do normally have a rule not to include early access games in videos like this, but this is too good not to share, with it flying a little under the radar, so if it does look good, be sure to give it a go. Speaking of early access titles, Vampire Survivors is the breakout hit of 2021, one where your abilities and enemy targeting is automatically done for you, which seems counterintuitive, but that does allow you to focus more on builds and strategy, combined with the satisfaction of slaughtering masses of enemies, and there's just something very special here. One of the most varied experiences in roguelites is that of Streets of Rogue, a game that takes place in procedurally generated cities, adding an element of GTA-style open-world shenanigans. The sheer number of characters that you can play as is amazing, where in addition to the regular ones like Soldier, Doctor, and Ninja, how about Gorilla, Alien, Mech Pilot, and more, resulting in one of the most content-packed games out there. Humor in games is often difficult to get right, but one that manages to nail it is Going Under, one that pokes fun at capitalism and startup culture, where you play as an unpaid intern sent into the dungeons of failed startups in order to recover some value for your company. I love how you wield office junk as weapons, combined with a wobbly art style and great writing, and you have another underappreciated game. For a 3D entry, I do think that Dreamscaper looks fantastic due to the use of lighting set in the world of dreams and nightmares, where the slight blur and soft lighting does contribute to the overall aesthetic. You're literally fighting your nightmares with some slick combat and fun abilities as well. They've learnt from the best in the genre in having a hub area with upgrades, where by day you're exploring the city, getting to know NPCs and upgrading your character, while at night you fall into your dreams, which is where the action takes place, conveniently structured as a modern roguelite should be. In the grand scheme of things, this has been overlooked as well, so please check this out. I often debate with myself on whether or not Children of Morta counts as a roguelite, since in many ways it does resemble Diablo more than Isaac, but there is the whole procedurally generated dungeons, die and respawn with upgrades element, so I do suppose it counts. It follows a family of heroes sworn to stem the corruption from the world, with a great variety of playable characters, meta progression, and a very compelling gameplay loop, with all of their planned DLC being released as of February this year, making it another obvious pick. The newest entry on this list is Warm Snow, a game that comes to us from a Chinese developer and does tap on Chinese mythology and culture in its theme, settings, and design. You play as a warrior on a quest to find and eliminate the source of something known as warm snow, a substance that fell from the sky that turned the people who inhaled it into monsters, battling his way through enemies and bosses alike. There are plenty of classes to play with, as well as a huge number of weapons and relics to choose from, with another compelling meta progression system that is kind of laid out like an RPG skill tree. The art and animations are gorgeous as well, with combat that feels great, although one of the main knocks on this game is that the translation isn't great, but is simply serviceable. But if you love this genre, do not sleep on this.
Another soul fouls my temple with every step. Tell me, pretender, can a man kill a god?
A title that looks phenomenal is Curse of the Dead Gods, one that, admittedly, does resemble Darkest Dungeon, or more specifically, graphic novels, where it does have quite an interesting risk-reward system.
How many sacrifices until you realize the divine is out of reach?
You play as a treasure hunter, seeking wealth, power, and immortality by delving into ancient temples, but the game throws curses at you, which increases rewards while of course adding some sort of penalty at the same time. Combat in this is the highlight and feels good, so add another one to the list of must-plays. The oldest title on this list is Nuclear Throne, one that long-time indie game fans might be familiar with, but if you started playing more of these in the past 2 to 3 years, it is certainly worth going back to. This is a tough-as-nails roguelike shooter with a whole bunch of projectiles, where the variety in playable characters and their mutations is interesting, along with the fact that you need to think about ammo in this game. There's very little meta progression, so it's not something that you can grind out like some of the more modern entries, which makes it of particular interest to revisit. One of the more underrated hits in the space is Dead Estate, an isometric pixel art entry where heroes find themselves trapped in a haunted mansion filled with monsters, having to fight their way out. There are 8 playable characters, which is varied, a whole bunch of weapons, items, and secrets, where one of the more interesting aspects of this is that the levels themselves are intentionally claustrophobic, which leads to intense action, where I particularly love this bit of the trailer as well.
Yeah, no, I'm dry. Unless you... Okay, yeah, we're short. Unless you want to haggle? Okay, who the...
Crawling, shooting, searching, running everywhere while trouble's coming. Endless, always breathing down my neck, but I am not succumbing. Don't know where I am. A sea of endless rooms, there's no outrunning. Dangerous doesn't right, you wanna win, you better start out gunning.
Chunks.
Grab your gun, can't get away. No escape, no, not today. Dead state.
Let's kick off the top 5 with Undermine, an entry from 2020 which was a fantastic year for roguelites, where this has you playing as disposable peasants sent into the mines to search for gold. This is essentially Isaac crossed with Rogue Legacy, with top-down action plus a very compelling upgrade system through the use of gold, with various vendors and upgrades from run to run. One key difference, however, is that it is more melee based, but the miner's pickaxe can be thrown with the expected bombs and relics, and most interestingly, environmental interactions as well. It is a very polished one of these which has the ability to hook people, making it earn a spot on the list. A roguelite that I don't see enough people talking about is Wizard of Legend, one of the sleekest and most fast-paced entries out there. Of course, you are playing as wizards blasting away at enemies, but these are not your old wizard characters wielding wands and staves, but rather wizards that get right up in the face of action. The spell crafting and combo system is excellent with a ton of variety, but the developers have been releasing free updates like Thundering Keep and Sky Palace since release in 2019, making this as good a time as any to pick this up.
Isaac, it's time to get up.
I'm probably gonna get some flack with this selection since The Binding of Isaac Rebirth comes in at number 3 for me personally, since for whatever reason I never really got along with this game, but do have to acknowledge how this game has changed the entire industry. The Binding of Isaac, beginning with the Flash versions way back when, has been one of the longest enduring pillars of indie games, where Isaac and Spelunky were two of the main reasons why indie games got huge, with the latest version, Rebirth and its DLC, Afterbirth, Afterbirth Plus and Repentance is the definitive way to play this game. The premise remains the same. You play as a little boy named Isaac who delves into the basement to avoid his mother, who, upon hearing the voice of God, is compelled to kill her own son, being a very dark setup, which of course did get this game in trouble with rating boards and Nintendo at one point in time. However, the action and huge variance in how upgrades synergize with each other makes this have so much replayability, and add to that secrets, challenges and a ton of unlockable characters, and you can see why this has a legion of fans.
The past is dead, the masters are slain, yet the Gungeon remains.
Enter the Gungeon is one of the best in the space, being a pixel art title where it seems like the developer found a fun concept to theme their game around and decided to see how far they could push that idea or joke to great effect. You play as various characters, each having their own unique backstory, all seeking the gun that can kill the past, which is a very absurd setup which adds to the humour. As an outsider looking in, it does seem as though the US has an obsession with guns, which is not common at all in many other countries, so in that same spirit, everything in this game is guns, guns and more guns, doing this better than Borderlands in my opinion. There are guns that shoot out other guns, enemies and characters that are essentially bullet casings or shells, bosses named and fused with D&D like the Behoster or Ammo Conda, but because it was taking it to such an extreme, I loved every minute of this game. It is very challenging due to the number of projectiles, but the sheer number of guns and even a clever cover mechanic by flipping tables is interesting, not to mention the dodge roll which is key, making this one of the best.
Stupid boy. I told you nobody gets out of here.
At this point, I suppose you can call me a Supergiant Games fanboy, since this game does not miss, producing one hit after the next, with Hades being their latest and greatest.
Yes, carry on everyone, don't mind me.
Let's get you from that miserable place.
The godlike roguelite has you playing as Zagreus, Prince of Hell, having to fight his way out of the underworld on the quest to escape. It has all the signature Supergiant touches like beautiful art, music, and best-in-class writing, but they really have outdone themselves with the action in this game, considering how their previous titles, Bastion, Transistor, and Pyre, did not have action like this.
I always wanted to kill a god. You'll have to do.
The prince himself. You want to talk to me?
How very interesting.
Death approaches.
Oh, thank you, lad. You really oughtn't have.
I love the different favours of the gods that you can get, combining in very clever ways, where they got the balance down in terms of the permanent progression from run to run, with upgrades for the hub area and for Zagreus himself. The game really kicked off a trend of storytelling in roguelites, where at the end of every run, you really want to go again since the NPCs will have new dialogue, might unlock some new elements, and just keeps you playing.
You must have seen by now how all the chambers seem to rearrange themselves. It has been fashioned to prevent escape.
The one issue that people seem to have with this game is that there isn't much variety in bosses and secrets, which is fair in my opinion, but the tightness of combat more than makes up for it, where I've played countless hours of this game, so take it from me, it gets the #1 spot. For more roguelites, watch these videos and I will see you after the jump.
Let's deal some death.